Double combo, dual outlets.
Yep.
We're ready for all the hard-hitting, super intrusive, like congressional hearing style.
That's good because you're already on mic.
Yes, perfect.
Just so
good.
you know.
Hot mic.
I just
I
came
love
to a
it.
V panel, so I'm ready to talk about the allegories between V and what's happening right now. And we can dive deep if you want. Go deep.
We're hit us with what you got.
Okay, so why
So,
don't we...
so can you tell us your name?
Yeah, so I'm Matt Nava. I'm the creative director at Giant Squid, a video game developer working on The Pathless, which is our next video game.
Oh, okay.
Austin Wintory, and I'm a composer and work on games and stuff, and including The Pathless.
So I do have some games-related questions for you guys.
Excellent.
So, do you want to start?
That is all we're qualified to answer.
All right.
So.
Let's start with the basic question. Xbox or PlayStation? Go.
Well, we're going to launch on PlayStation.
So
and
contractually
also,
speaking.
Yes. But also on the Epic Game Store and Apple Arcade.
And then, what are your opinions on what the next generation games are starting? And next year, how is all that extra power and technology going to impact how you guys do games? Because I know when we went from the PS3 to like the PS4, budgets went really out of whack. How's the next gen going to impact what you guys do and how you guys think about it?
Well, I think...
Oh, wait. All that I forgot.
We're good? Okay. Yeah, so I think every time the game consoles become more powerful, what it does for a developer is it allows you to do more with less, basically. You can get more of your vision in there and do less work to make it happen. And so we always have a grand vision that's going to take 1 million polygons to create, but the more powerful the console, the more polygons you're going to be able to push. So you can just get to that vision quickly. And I think that's really the most important thing that's going to happen, is it's going to make it easier for a more wide amount of voices, basically democratize the creation of games.
Does power impact your storytelling ability at all?
For music?
For music, yeah.
It does less today than 10 years ago. The musical side of kind of the Moore's Law arms race leveled off a lot, because once video games had the ability to play back recorded audio about 20 years ago, and a little more than that, 25 years ago, and now we could record, orchestras and solo instruments and all kinds of things. The technological barriers really quickly became pretty trivial. The biggest barriers that I ever encounter is just if a game is in a place where the democratized power of the tools let them make a really huge game on a comparatively small budget, where it still needs a huge amount of music, but we have a smaller budget than we might have in some other universe to create that with. That can be a challenge. Like if you have to pull 3 hours of music out of what previously the same scale required only 1 hour, now you're basically trying to make every dollar count for 3. So, but that's a luxury problem to have. It's not like, it's a very different problem, and it's a more fundamentally creative problem than a literal technological barrier like he's describing of, I want to create X and the software or the hardware can't do it. It just can't. There's just a finite limit to what it can do. Music, I never really have that issue.
So, writing music for video games, the player can choose the pathway they go based on decisions they make in the game. What challenges does that present to you as a composer in putting together your music to tell the story?
Depending on the game, it's a whole load of challenge, because the thing about music is it's a linear art form related to time. The most sort of obvious or salient characteristic of music is that it takes place over the passage of time, as A gives way to B, as to gives way to C. games, especially the kind of game you're describing, are non-linear, or at least they are multi-linear, you could say, where it's not a prescriptive path the way you watch a movie and B always follows A, C always follows B, that kind of thing. So I have to basically make non-linear music, which is another way of saying the most sort of important quality of music is now this variable that I play with, in the same way that you play with rhythm and melody and harmony and texture and all those other things. So it's a completely new way of writing or even thinking about music relative to, I don't think it's lofty to say, the entire history of humanity up till the development of video games. No classical composer, no opera composer, no band, no folk singer, no jazz artist ever dealt with the idea that the audience is going to potentially take us down a path that's very different from my initial conception. But games do that routinely every single day. So it's awesome because it's like this whole new art that's kind of unprecedented, and we're still fumbling in the dark figuring it out. We have no idea what we're doing collectively. I suspect that 20 and 30 and 50 years from now, we'll look back at the things we're doing today and think, my God, that's so barbaric, because it was like such clumsy solutions to figure out how to make the music alive and dance with the player. It's really hard, but it's fun. I mean, it's like the first time you ever try Sudoku and you're like, so wait, what? And your brain is kind of needing a minute to, that's sort of how it feels, but I like that.
And after a while, you figure out, okay, if I work the box in Sudoku this way, I can always get them to add up and just work one box at a time.
Yeah, you definitely develop techniques, and then likewise, those expose even crazier, more ambitious things that you can do next. I mean, like what we're doing on our current game is much more involved technically and musically than our previous game, which was more than the one before that, which was more than the one, that. So it's always
presents a different set of conditions that the player can, swap between as they play, and that also presents a new challenge for how you match music to it. So you think you figured it out on the game that you just shipped, and then you're like, okay, make a new game. What? We have to figure it out all again. So it's always how it is.
And can you talk a little bit about the premise of your game, and again state the name of the game, and then what the mechanics of the game are?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working on The Pathless. The game is an adventure game. You're a hunter who is traveling through this forest with an eagle companion. You shoot arrows. It's an archery game. There's big beasts in the forest, and you have to discover them and battle them as you go through this kind of mythic journey to save the world. So from the darkness, there's a curse of darkness on the world.
And then what's your inspiration for both the music of the game and the game itself? What are some of your influences?
Sure. I mean, I love to go hiking out in the forest. I actually took a trip up to Pacific Northwest in Oregon, in the redwood forests, and I just love the atmosphere out there. And we also just love animals, and a big part of the game is the relationship you have with this eagle. And I think our last game was ABZU, is this game about the ocean, and it has a ton of fish and everything like that, and there's a relationship you have with a great white shark. So that's something that we have in our games, is this relationship with nature, relationship with animals. And we have a lot of inspiration from ancient art, ancient cultures. I love all these like ancient ruins. I went to Tulum, which is in Mexico, and they have the pyramids and incredible architecture there. So yeah, I gained a lot of inspiration from traveling.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of the music, I try to make every score very sort of deliberately and specifically derived from the thing it's for. So if I'm writing for a game, I want that game to be the primary or only inspiration for the score, so that I'm not just kind of arbitrarily adding stuff on that has nothing to do with the game, but it really feels like the music just was of the game. It should feel like you can't imagine anything different for it, and that's a long, it's a difficult process, and it can take a long time, but that's always the goal, which means that my inspiration is always kind of like the same inspiration he's talking about. It's just sort of 1 degree removed now, where he'll send me, poetry that he's reading that is inspiring ideas in the game, or texts, or like he said, a lot of ancient art and architecture. Like here's a tablet from an archaeological dig site from 4,000 years ago, and I really like the way it's this and that and this, and I'll try to kind of internalize that and figure out how does the music ping pong off of that. So yeah, to me it's like he's kind of absorbing the world and it's funneling in, and then I'm trying to tap that line basically.
And then, other than Freddie's music, I'm going to start with you.
I'm Austin. That's Freddie.
Oh, sorry.
But I would happily be Freddie.
You know what it is? It's 2 days of no coffee.
Well, we will fix that. But no, it's okay. I'll tell you all about my score to animated Justice League movies.
Oh, cool.
And
I apologize.
that's still
for
Freddie.
That.
I'm trolling
I
you.
do apologize.
No, it's all good.
But other than Austin's music,
Yeah.
what musical influences do you draw from?
The
No, it's all
music,
good.
The music that I listen to is, I'm a visual person. I started as an art director. I do a lot of concept art, painting, 3D modeling and stuff. So I find that the music that I have the most powerful connection to is the music that I have a visual connection to as well. So I listen to a lot of music from movies and video games that I didn't really realize was my brain was soaking up as I was taking in this media, and then later on you realize that music is now a part of you, and that's how we want our scores to be as well. Where as you're playing the game, it just feels like it's coming out of it, just is a part of this experience, and then it has this strong connection to you because it didn't just attack you with sound, but it's also the experience, the narrative, all this sort of thing. So yeah, my musical inspirations are definitely in that vein. So.
And Austin.
I swear it's all good. I know how this is, like 10,000 of these a day.
What musical influences do you basically derive from?
I mean, every composer has like their list of other musicians and composers that have inspired them. My kind of grand master inspirational source is a composer, Jerry Goldsmith, who did a million movies. I'm a major sort of acolyte of Leonard Bernstein. I love the way that he brought multiple things together. He was a wonderful composer. He was a performer, and very much like this theatrical. He loved to really entertain people in a larger-than-life, almost P.T. Barnum kind of way. He was also a profoundly gifted teacher, and he could distill complicated, like music theory and things like that the average person wouldn't have experience with. He could make it so digestible, and so someone like that is also very much a hero. But then it's like you go 1 millimeter below the surface, and I have 10,000 more names for you from every genre and every time period. And because there's amazing music and composers and artists at every moment of human history. And one of the things that's crazy is for everything prior to the kind of the modern era, we only get very tiny little cherry pickings of what has survived. Always would be fascinated to know what gems are just fully lost that we could learn from. Who was a century ahead of their time and just got completely forgotten. So, and not that is at all an answer to your question, but while I'm here musing anyway.
No, but it is an interesting thought because how much music has been lost over the generations.
It's probably like species,
Yeah.
the majority. 99% probably of all music written is gone.
Sad, very sad.
Similar to art, I would think.
And then I'm going to ask one more time. Can you stick your names for the camera? And then, what is my final question? I have so many now. I'm going to end on kind of a jokey question.
Okay.
So I heard Tom Cruise walk the show floor yesterday, and no one wants to believe it. My question to you is, do you believe it or not?
Well, I saw it on Twitter.
Therefore it's true.
So therefore it's true.
I believe it. And it sounds like the kind of guy who would cruise down there.
He would just drop right in. Why not? Yeah. And you need our names, yeah?
Yep.
Matt Nava.
And I'm Austin Wintory.
And then my last serious question is, what are your top 5 favorite animes of all time? Animation. But now, I don't want to say anime. I want to say video games right now.
Top 5 video games. It's like the hardest question ever, but because there's so many that I love. But you know, the easy answers are Ico. It's a PlayStation 2 game. I really love Link's Awakening, the original Game Boy game. That was like one of the first games I ever really played. Yeah, I don't think the rest are important. No, I'm just kidding. No, there's so many.
only 2.
There's so many.
It's a really hard question.
Yeah.
I think my go-to is usually is Grim Fandango. I just loved that game. That game felt so much more mature than other games, despite the fact that it's also like a silly comedy. But the storytelling was such a notch up, and I was always gravitating towards storytelling.
And if I remember correctly, you had an amazing soundtrack.
The score is a guy named Peter McConnell, and it was one of the first scores I remember hearing that was loaded with live instruments and not done digitally. And he got all these great, unique performers, like weird, saxophone and clarinetists and like a Mexican mariachi band and stuff that he would go and just find in San Francisco. And so it has all this personality, and it's just extraordinary. But yeah, there's a million others that you could name also, but I just love Grim Fandango.
The games that I really get inspired by, the ones that create a unique atmosphere that really makes you want to stay in that world and understand it and figure out its mysteries, and that's the kind of thing that we also try to make. Atmosphere is really the most important quality for me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Double combo.